Hi. So I ended up doing a reread of Harrow the Ninth as my first book this month. So I wanted to talk to you about it. And I decided I was just going to read the audio, then read the physical, and then do the deep dive thing. But what I ended up doing was listening to the audio. And as I was listening to it, I just became so obsessed and sucked in and just feeling so many things that I decided to do kind of a real-time reaction to what I was listening to. So this video will contain spoilers for Gideon, Harrow, and Nona. So if you have not read the series and you intend to and you don't want to be spoiled, I don't recommend continuing with this. If you don't care to be spoiled, or if you've already read it and you want to see if your thoughts and understanding match up with mine, please watch and please tell me what you think, because I'm very curious to know. Essentially, it is confusing as it sounds on the first read through, but once you read through it a second time, all these things are revealed. You understand them, especially if you've read Nona. So if you go back and read this after reading Nona, you understand so much about what happened. So I'm going to go into that a little bit in the next clips and hopefully make it make sense, because it didn't make sense to me on the first time through. So if you haven't read it twice, maybe this will help you connect with something. And if you come up with something that I missed, because I actually didn't talk about a lot of things either, so if there's things I missed and you think I really should have talked about them, let me know, because I will probably be doing another video, because I'm going to give it a couple weeks and then I'm going to do a physical read through. So I picked this up near the end of my audio because I wanted some quotes that in the last few chapters I started listening and reading at chapter 43. So I'll do another reread in a couple of weeks or so physically and let you know what I think maybe next month. So if you have anything you want me to cover, you think I missed that's really important, let me know and I'll talk about it at another time. So let's get into it. Hello. I apologize if the AC is loud, but it's hot in here and I'm warm. So it's running. I am 3 hours into Harrow, and honestly, I remembered that it was Gaslighty, but I forgot it was this Gaslighty. But it's so good. So here's your spoiler warning. We are just past the events that happened at the end of Gideon, and Harrow has joined with Gideon as her cavalier, and she hates it. She's trying to block out the fact that it happened, and she's trying to convince herself that her cavalier was actually Ortis, and so she's rewriting the history and going through those memories, and she's being followed around by the body, which is a combination at this point of the body from the locked tomb that she saw as a child, and she admitted to Gideon that she saw and fell in love with in Gideon the Ninth. But the body has changed and has Gideon's eyes and a little bit of Gideon's voice, because I'm listening to this on audio. Moira Quirk has given the body a little bit of Gideon's voice there. So the body is kind of following her around as a ghost that only she can see, and now she believes that she's haunted and going insane a little bit. So yeah, that's happening. Her and Ianthe hate each other. The other lictor that they've met so far calls them the babies, and is upset that they're teenagers and has accused them of being 12. So I find that kind of amusing. I am sitting down here because my dog has hurt his back somehow. I don't know how. I came home and he was in a lot of pain and I was very worried about him. He's gotten a lot better. He's moving around a lot easier than he was, because it's the weekend. It didn't seem bad enough to go to the emergency vet. He just seemed a little stiff, and he's been very tired, and he's a border collie, so the fact that he's not been very active, but he's perking back up. He's starting to be his whiny self again, and my mom gave me this infrared heat thing, and he seems to really like it, so I'm just sitting here giving him a little infrared massage for the next 15-20 minutes, and watch Killing Eve while I do that. I was told to watch this back in 2018 or 19 when it came out, but I have a terrible habit of I have the worst personality to tell me to watch shows, because if someone tells me to watch something, especially if I want to watch it and then someone's like, oh my god, you have to watch it, I'm just no, I'm not interested anymore. It is the worst thing. So then a few years later I'll finally watch it. So I'm in Act 2. I just started it, so all of Act 1 is kind of setting up for us what is about to happen, what has been happening, and setting the tone for it. So we're in two different storylines. One is Harrow having flashbacks to what happened in Canaan House. However, Harrow is remembering it differently than we experienced it in Gideon. And my first run through, I was just like, what is going on? Why? I don't understand what actually happened, which one is the correct memory, and you don't find that out until the end. So, please do not listen to me anymore if you have not read this yet and plan on reading it, because it is amazing experiencing it firsthand. And I think that's part of what settled this as like one of my favorite series for me. So every time Harrow has a flashback or a memory, there is someone in that memory going, is this how it happened? Or this is not how it happened, fighting her memory of what happened. And I was so confused on that in the beginning, and I think it's because I was just listening to it so, like, quickly and constantly that I missed, like, I couldn't figure out what that was doing. And that's our hint that these are false memories. And Harrow will find out in a little bit why there's the false memories. But, so Harrow has now met the 3 remaining saints, the Saint of Joy, the Saint of Patience, and I can't remember what Ortis the First is. And I love this because anytime she hears what she's done, here's a spoiler for the end. Okay, so what she's done is she's adjusted her brain that anytime she hears the word Gideon, she replaces it with Ortis, because she's trying to replace her memory of Gideon because it is so painful for her to remember what happened, and she doesn't want to lose Gideon. Part of why she won't let go of the sword is because Gideon told her at the end of book 1 to never let go of the sword, and like never let it out of her sight or whatever. So she's kind of put this thing in her head to never let the sword out of her sight, so she doesn't, even though she can't really wield it. So Kithurea, who is the villain in the first book, is now basically lying in state on the ship, and they've had like a little funeral for her. She's learned a little about who she is. We've learned about who she is. Kithurea is essentially from the 7th house, I believe. She kind of goes along with that line. I can't remember if the first book explains that or not. I'm gonna reflip through all my notes here soon and find out. Okay. But Kithurea has a lot of the like same symptoms and stuff that Dulcinea did, which is how she was able to like be Dulcinea. So and we get like her history and what people cared about her, like why they cared about her and how they cared about her, and a little bit like that. And it's just the world building is just so good in here. Sorry, I can't figure out how to hold my phone. It's like exactly everything that I want in a world building, and like the way that it's like piecemealed out to you doesn't feel like Tamsin Muir is holding back for like just to make it more confusing. It's like we're learning as the characters are learning, and it's just so good. So then we have the present part, which is where, you know, we've learned who Kithurea is, and we've learned the other saints, and that's all told in second person, and it's you did this and you did that, and it works so well, because sometimes it can be so overwhelming to have it like that, but I love the reveal of why it's like this, and I cannot wait till we get to the end to have that reveal and see how I feel about it the second time having it. So yeah, there's been a lot of setup. We got some kind of bonding moments between Ianthe and Harrow, but Harrow really still hates Ianthe. But Ianthe has helped her do the work, which is what Harrow refers to it as. And she's written herself letters that she's supposed to open at different points in time if she meets certain people or if certain things happen. One of them is for if her eyes change. And so when you're a lictor, your eyes become the same color as your cavalier's eyes. And so Ianthe's eyes are constantly flickering back and forth between her eye color and Babs, Niberius's eyes, because he's fighting her because he doesn't want to be there, because he's actually more loyal to Coronabeth. And so there's God, I love these characters and I love this story, and I'm just obsessed. I am playing Pokemon Arceus while my mop runs downstairs. I think it's almost done, but I'm going to play for a little bit longer and keep listening, and then I'm going to go do a couple of more chores. So I'll check in with you in a little bit, maybe around Act 3. Okay, so I'm still in Act 2, but I just realized that I had skipped over the first time, or like forgotten it or said it wasn't important, that the saint names come from the Cavalier's personality. So Mercy Warren is the saint of joy because Christabel was that. And then Augustine is the saint of patience because his brother Alfred, I believe, Alfred was like the most patient person. And then Ortis the first is the saint of duty. We haven't had his cavalier's name revealed yet, but it's Pyrrha, and Pyrrha has actually been mentioned once before when they were talking about how to describe the river. And Pyrrha is the saint of duty, and that just makes so much sense for the rest of the series. It just makes so much sense, and I'm just like, the saint of duty. Okay, so anyway, I just had to say that. I'm gonna go back to my game and maybe get some lunch. Actually, I should probably get some lunch. Okay, I finished Act 2. And we're starting to get more, like, information about the saints. We're watching Harrow train. We're getting more of what happened at Canaan House, and it's presented here as much more of, like, a mystery, like a murder mystery. And I love the fact that she has wiped Calamities and Cam just completely from, like, all of her interactions. She's like, I've never seen them up close. I really don't even know what they look like. Like, just wiping it all from her memory, which is so in, like, juxtaposition with the Harrow we were presented with in the first book from Gideon's perspective, of her being someone who is cold and distant and unemotional and not involved with anything. And then this Harrow we're presented with is so traumatized by the events that she experienced and the emotions that she's feeling about them, and how she feels about everyone, that she's like, no, like, get it all away from me. Like, I can't feel that. And it makes it so much more impactful having the change in perspective of going from this and seeing, because we know, okay, even more of a spoiler, we know from the end of the book that Gideon is the one narrating everything. Gideon is the saying you. Gideon is observing everything Harrow's doing and is narrating it out to Harrow. And for it to have it in that perspective, for Gideon to see Harrow as who Harrow really is, instead of the Harrow that Harrow was presented to Gideon, is just, it does my heart in a little bit. Like, every single time, it just does my heart in. So we've had the first attempt of Ortis the First attempting to kill Harrow, and we only know that he views Harrow as a threat to John or the Lord or teacher or whatever he goes by at that moment. It really freaks out Harrow when people call him John, and I kind of enjoy that. But this is where we're getting, he's just a man. He's a man who was able to, like, discover a powerful form of magic, but he's still just a man. And it's kind of like, it's so interesting the way that Tamsin Muir has done this. So that's where I'm at there. Okay, so I just finished Act 3. I think I just finished Act 3. Because I think Act 4 is just starting. So essentially we're starting to get, like, some more understanding of what's happening. So, spoilers. I'm going to say it every time. Spoilers for Act 3, okay? So, Anthe... Oh my gosh, I gotta turn this sound off because it's driving me crazy. Okay, so Anthe can't handle the arm that was given to her because Kitharea ripped off her arm at the end of Gideon. So she can't handle the arm that is not hers, and she desperately wants a new one. She refuses to fight with it. It's just not working for her. Niberius is being a dick about it for some reason. So she ends up, like, basically she's asked Harrow to make her an arm because she knows Harrow can do it. Harrow has refused. And then, the Saint of Duty breaks through all of Harrow's wards and tries to kill her in the bathtub, at which point Harrow then, like, stays awake for, like, 86 hours, learns how to make soup because God tells her to learn how to cook, read a book. So she reads a cookbook, learns how to cook, makes soup, puts her own bone marrow into it, and bursts a skeleton up through the Saint of Duty, at which point God is like, knock it the fuck off. And she's like, you don't understand, he tried to kill me in the bathtub. And she's like all upset about it, and for some reason God just kind of dismisses it, and he tells her to, like, that she's gonna be protected. So she ends up with Ianthe, and at one point Harrow kind of wakes up to Ianthe trying to like saw off her own arm. So she's like, that won't work. And she like takes the arm off and builds her a new arm out of bone. Augustine gilds it in gold because he's like, oh, it's hideous. Let me at least make it shiny, because apparently that's Augustine. So so now this is why Ianthe has like a skeleton arm. And so Ianthe, in return, has decided that the Saint of Duty needs to die, and she's going to help Harrow make sure that he dies by getting the help of Augustine. So Augustine and Mercymorn come together to seduce God so that the Saint of Duty will leave and gives Harrow a chance to attack him. However, Harrow finds him already nearly dead because Cytherea has woken up and has attacked him and tried to incinerate him. Harrow saves him, and he makes this comment about how he'll always know her, he can see her, he knows she's there. And the ghost that's following Harrow around. So that's why the Saint of Duty, Gideon, has been trying to kill Harrow, is because he sees the ghost. Harrow does not understand, because why would Harrow understand? She hasn't been told everything. So, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Okay, it's getting darker. It's 2 o'clock and it's gonna rain. So Harrow is set down on her own to kill a planet for the first time, and she runs into Camilla. And Camilla presents her with Palamity's skull, and she's like, can you tell me if he's in here? He bound his soul to his bones, and I need to know if I got the right bones so that I have his spirit, which is like heart-wrenching. And then so Harrow, just kind of moved by like curiosity, for she says, what kind of man would do that? Boy, what kind of boy would do that? She takes the skull to the river to find his spirit, and she like finds like a little bubble in the river with Palamity as a spirit, and I legit nearly cried with their like reunion because I love Pal. I love him so much. He is, apart from Gideon, like my favorite character, which is why the first book is so much higher for me, because I like the characters in the first book so much better than I like the characters in the second book. I like Harrow and I like Ianthe, but I like Ianthe for different reasons. I don't feel emotionally connected to Ianthe, but I do to Cam and Pal, and I just adore them. And Magnus, and at least we get a bit more Magnus, and actually some of his wife. Oh my god, what is her name? She's the actual necromancer. Hers is an A, right? I can't remember her name for some reason. I think it's because we don't... Abigail Pent. We don't get a lot of her in the first book, but we get so much of her in this book, and I adore her. So she kind of brings it up, but I don't like the lictors. Mercymorn is insufferable, and Augustine is a pompous dick, and we don't even really know much about the Saint of Duty, personality-wise. So the characters, it's the characters in the first book for me, and the fact that we get this reunion with Pal as just emotions were running strong. So we're starting to get into like the meat of what's happening. I have about 3 hours left in the book, and I'm gonna try and finish it today, I think, and then I'll maybe try and finish this tonight. Okay, I have just finished the chapter where we have the reveal, and it's getting a little chilly in here, so I've got my grandma sweater on. Okay, we've got the reveal of what has been happening, where we all felt gaslit, like if you've read this, like where the whole book up until, I had to grab my physical copy, up until chapter 43, you are so fucking gaslit because Harrow is gaslighting herself, and it explains it. And I think I listened to it, and I listened to it like at a higher speed, and so I went back and I reread it because there was a... Let me just go through chapter 43, okay? So we start off with Harrow has been stabbed through, and she's just gone through all these different scenarios where she's met the different characters who died in Gideon the Ninth, and then sees Gideon, and then Abigail, and each one is, this isn't how it happened. This isn't how it happened. This isn't how it happened. And the last one, she's like, absolutely not. And just like ends the thing until Harrow finally comes to the bubble in the river with Abigail, where we have been seeing the replay of everything that happened in Canaan House, but in an entirely different vein of reality than what we experienced in Gideon. And it's just, oh boy. Okay. So Harrow, it says, Harrow thrashed on the mattress and breathed in lungfuls of splintered air. She writhed like a shot animal, arms pinned her down. Stay with us, Ninth, come on. So she wakes up like as if she's been stabbed in this constructed world that she's made, and Abigail starts asking her questions. And then she hears all these like different conversations, and then she hears, Harrow, said someone close by, someone familiar. Her vision swam. If I forget you, let my right hand be forgotten, her mouth was saying. And add more also, if aught but death part me and thee. And unsteadily, griddle. And I replayed this like 4 times, and then so that I could like mark the quote, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm just grabbing my book, and so I could highlight it because I know it's gonna have the same impact the next time because it had this impact the first time. And so she realizes Gideon's there, and she kind of just lets go. And it says she dug her hands into the mattress and she cried for Gideon Nav. And I legit was like so fucking emotional with this. Like, oh my god. She stopped weeping when her body had physically exhausted itself. The tears could not flow from gummed up eyes nor sobs from a cracked throat. For a long time she pressed her face into the wet patch of mattress she had cried into and smelled the old stuffing and felt the grief that had multiplied into a universe. This whole book has been Harrow rejecting dealing with grief. That's what this whole part of this book has been. This whole 380 pages has been Harrow rejecting the concept of grief. And so fucking real. So this is when Abigail starts questioning her about what happened. And Harrow admits what she did. And after she like takes a breath, she asks Abigail a question to make sure that it's not, because she believes at this point that she's insane, because that's the memory that she's constructed for herself. And so she explains that what she did was, she says, it was easier to answer the question mechanically. In the first days, I knew she would be absorbed. I understood I would inadvertently destroy her soul. The process was already underway, but it hadn't finished. I had time. I decided to remove my ability to so incorporate her by removing my ability to comprehend her. Harrow fucked up her brain so that she would not be able to remember Gideon. And I wrote this as a note back when there's a point where she's having a conversation with John in one of the other earlier chapters, and he touches her temple, and he's like, someone's been messing with your temporal lobe. And she like runs from the room because it was her and I believe Ianthe fucked with her brain, so that she could wipe all these memories, so that she wouldn't absorb Gideon, so that Gideon could remain Gideon as a separate soul in her body. Which is interesting because, spoiler for Nona, somehow, I'm sure it's explained, and I will get it explained on my reread, somehow Camilla and Palamedes did this, where they both existed in Cam's body for an extended period of time. And I can't remember how, or if it was explained, or because Nona is not all there. So, and we get this chapter explains to us kind of what's happening with that. And okay, so easier now to recall it a litany, the same sing-song recitation as the eightfold world. It could almost live apart from suffering. I took the part of my brain that remembered her, that understood her soul, and I disconnected it. Then I made a rather crude systems so as to not be accidentally reminded, knowing that the pathways might reopen if they were knocked about. I had an accomplice, someone who knew how to manipulate the fatty tissue of the brain better than I possibly could. I made my skull a construct, programmed to apply pressure to specific lobes, and it worked, Pent. It worked. It was stupid, a brute force solution, but it worked. All of this just to not forget Gideon. Like, well, to forget Gideon so that Gideon would all of this to forget Gideon so that she couldn't lose Gideon. Like, so many people have said this who've read this series, but this is a true, like, I believe it is a true enemies to lovers, but not in a almost romantic way. At least, I don't know what's going to happen in Electo, but it's not necessarily a romantic way throughout the thing, because Harrow is in love with the body in the tomb. But she loves Gideon. There's a difference, and I just... But then Abigail questions her again, and she's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm referring to the invasive soul. You are being haunted, said Abigail calmly. I had assumed you had picked this battlefield deliberately and raised an army to fight alongside you. I didn't quite know why you had chosen us. Now I know, but it seems you did not. You are possessed by an angry spirit, Harrow, and you are losing the war. So this thing that has been haunting them throughout, I can't remember what they call it in this version of Canaan House, but this creature that's been haunting them and trying to kill them with a gun is what is haunting Harrow. And Harrow realizes that she made a bubble and all this stuff, the same as Sextus did. And then she's like, but why is this so different? Then she says, but why make so many changes? Why is this narrative so different? This is not how it happened at all. I understand that Gideon had to be absent, but why? And Pent says, this isn't a picture you're drawing, Harrow. It's a play you're directing. You set up a stage in the river, you pulled in ghosts as your actors, and you enforced certain rules to keep your cast on script. But now another director is trying to hijack the play, and the struggle to control backstage is leaking over into the action out front. You are being ousted. So they have this whole conversation about what to do when, like, something attacks the window, and Pent tells her, like, forget the fact that you've been run through on the outside. If you're still here, like, we're still okay. Your body is still alive. But if you die in here, we're all dead. Like, our spirits are gone. Poof. So that's where that chapter ends. And I think here I'm going to take a break. I'm at it's page 387 in the book, chapter 44. That same night before the Emperor's murder is about to start. And I have about 2 hours left in the audiobook. I'm going to finish it audio, and even though I'm like desperate to just read it and finish it, because I am going to be doing a physical reread in probably a week or two, I'm just going to do the audio for now. And the audio gives you so many hints because of Moira Quirk's really good voice acting and specific voices she has for each character. You kind of know what's happening differently than you do when you read it because you know the voices you're hearing. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to take a break, do something, breathe. This has been a very long update, so moving on. Okay, I'm coming back sooner here because I decided to just finish it, and oh my god. Okay, so Harrow's body wakes up with Gideon in charge, and I'm only a couple pages into this chapter. I'm now just fucking tandem reading because I need to be able to stop and tell you the words. The words! Okay, so Gideon is pissed off because Harrow has, like, not kept an edge on the sword, not taken care of it, and she says, I think the main thing I should have said was, you sawed open your skull rather than be beholden to someone. You turned your brain into soup to escape anything less than 100% freedom. You put me in a box and buried me rather than give up your own goddamn agenda. Harrow Hark, I gave you my whole life and you didn't even want it. And that just harkens back to the first book where Gideon says, like, a couple of times, I gave you my whole goddamn life. And this time she really did. But the fact that they've been two souls in the same body, Gideon doesn't understand the reason why Harrow did what she did. She just knows that she did it. And she assumes that she did it out of selfishness. And in a way, it kind of was selfish of her because she didn't want to lose Gideon. But Harrow believed that it was selflessness because she didn't want to lose Gideon. She didn't want Gideon's life to be given to Harrow. Harrow did not want... she didn't want Gideon's life, but not in the way that Gideon is interpreting it here. And I just love the fact that these are just two completely broken children who just want somebody to love them and want them. The fact that when John tells Harrow that he wished that she could have been his daughter, and it breaks her, uncontrollably breaks her. is, it just, these poor unloved children. Yes. Just had my favorite joke in probably this, in all of Harrow, which is those motherfuckers had a, what was it? I have to go back to it. These motherfuckers had a hunger that only thumbs could satisfy, which is llamas and hats, and it just makes me laugh. Like, the amount of memes that get thrown in this book is just... But I'm a little bit further, and we've just had the reveal that Mercy Morn knew who was haunting Harrow, and that Harrow was haunted, essentially, because she's like, so now you come to me first at the end of everything. And then she's like, no, wait, it's not you. Who the fuck are you? And now she's like talking about the failure of the Ninth House operation, which is how Gideon came to be. So we're about to get that reveal. I'm gonna just turn this vlog into just a like real-time reaction to Harrow before I go into like actually like doing more detailed descriptions of what happened. I'd kind of forgotten about this part, but to save Harrow from the sleeper who wants Harrow's body as her new body, yes, they called up the ghost of Matthias Nonius, who is like the most revered cavalier in all of Ninth House history. Basically, they called the ghost who has ascended to sainthood to fight this sleeper. Okay, so this is the part I actually forgot. So Nonius did manage to take down the sleeper, who looks a lot like Gideon, so and is in the orange they call it the Has suit, which is how Gideon's mother showed up on the 9th. So there's a chance that Harrow has been haunted by the ghost of Gideon's mother, which is interesting, and that would make sense with some of the other things that we've seen, but is also weird. And it's set up to make us think that it's the body, but then the body looks very different. And Harrow would immediately recognize the body if it was the body hunting her. So that's where my confusion lies, in that that's just the nature of this book, in this whole series. But it's not like an annoying way that it's confusing. Like, there are so many books that are written that just don't tell you shit, and it's frustrating and like not done well. This is done well. But Harrow now has to decide if she's going to go into the river and face madness and unknowns, or return to her body and thus lose Gideon's soul. That's what she has to decide. Also, there's 35 minutes left in this book, so let's fucking go. Okay, so, figured it out based on the next bit of the chapter. I've only gone 4 minutes in, but the Revenant, it's a revenant, so she exists in both planes. She exists in the river in Harrow's bubble because she's been haunting Harrow, and she exists inside Kithurea's body. So this is kind of the part that is a struggle because okay, Kithurea took over Dulcinea Septimus's body. So, what everyone views as Kithurea is Dulcinea Septimus. But now that it was Dulcinea's / Kithurea's body, it's been inhabited by the Revenant, Captain Wake, who is the leader of the something Eden. BOE. Birth of Eden? I don't remember. This is so confusing. So hopefully I get some clarity in a minute. But I need to tell you. So they find Gideon in Harrow's body and Ianthe are spying on John because Ianthe's like, we need to take you to God so he can fix you, so that he can bring Harrow back out. Well, meanwhile, Harrow is deciding whether she's going to come back out or not in the other plane of existence. So we've got dual timelines happening, two things happening at the same time on different planes. So this is my favorite part. Okay, so God refers to Commander Wake as Commander Wake. All these parts are my favorite part. Just roll with me, okay? he calls her Commander Wake, and then she's like, call me by my full name or don't name me at all. I'll be damned if I pass up a chance to hear you speak the words. The Emperor of the Nine Houses sighed. Commander, awake remembrance of these valiant dead, he said. All of it. I can't believe you feel like you're in a position to demand things of me. All of it, Gaius, because she's like tied to a chair. His name is John Gaius, by the way. She's like, all of it, Gaius. There was a preparatory sound of an indrawn breath. Awake remembrance of these valiant dead, Awake remembrance of these valiant dead, Kiahua Ko Te Pai. Snap back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. He recited it all in one breath, which I did not do. So, yeah, because I got stuck on the Kiahua Ko Te Pai, which I'm not sure what that is a reference to. But snap back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. An Eminem song. And honestly, the way that we go in Nona, small spoilers, with naming all of these members of this revolution, insurrection, insurgents, people fighting the system, they have all these like references to all these like names of songs from our time, and considering we're like 10,000 years in the future, I find it really funny and something that could actually kind of happen given the way that we like people are starting to name their kids. It is kind of funny to me. But then when he introduces her to Augustine and Mercy Morn, who have just shown back up, he goes, Mercy Morn the First, Augustine the First, meet Commander Wake Me Up Inside. Just another name to another song, just to make fun of her. He's like, sincerest apologies if I got that wrong, just to be a dick to her. And I honestly kind of laughed about it a little bit. So yeah, we're doing a reveal here. We're about to go into a big reveal of the story of Gideon, because he's like, I don't understand why you went to the Ninth. How did you get the coordinates? You didn't even go to the fake house, which is, I'm assuming, where they hold the prisoners. You went to the real house. You got there. What was your end goal? Like, what the fuck were you doing? So we're about to get her villain speech, and fucking love. Tamsin Muir is such a fucking genius. Okay. Reveal. Small reveal. She was... Okay, so... Mercy Morn asks where she's been for 19 years, right? Gideon is 18, so here we go. Okay, she says, where you fucking left me. In my bones, then a blade in that fucking hole. Okay, so she was attached to her bones. Revenants, we've learned, are attached to objects, including they can be attached to bones. So she was attached to her bones, then she was attached to the sword. The sword which Harrow and Gideon have been carrying. So, Kithurea was actually killed. Harrow did kill Kithurea. And then somehow the ghost that has been haunting Harrow, that has been haunting Harrow, was attached to the sword and transferred to Kithurea's body / Dulcinea's body. So, that is what happened. It's so convoluted that it fucking works. Okay, she talks about what she had to do when, because it says she says, bleh, she says, I did what I had to do. Where is it? I did what I had to do when the dummy ones died, even though you dried up liches didn't give me the first fucking clue what I was really doing, checking for signs of life, retrieving a sample. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have just shelled the place. Okay, so there's a note in the beginning that Harrow reads. Harrow's reading notes that nobody else can see. And the first note that she reads is, the eggs you gave me all died. And I'll tell you when the next reveal comes, because this is connected to something, but I want to have the exact wording, so I'm going to wait until it comes, but keep that in mind. Okay, so Wake has revealed that she went to the Ninth to get to the tomb. And God's like, but you can't get into the tomb, not without me. So she says, I had the baby. Gideon. The baby I had to incubate myself for 9 long fucking months when the fetal dummies these two gave me died. Augustine says in horror, oh God, it was yours. I thought you'd used in vitro on one of Mercy's. I said they all died, said Wake. The dummies died, the ova died, only the sample was still active. The sample is John's semen, just so you know. Gideon is the daughter of God. So, there you go. Okay, so Wake has revealed that she nicknamed the baby Bomb, and she was basically planning on destroying the tomb with this bomb baby that she created. The Saint of Duty, Gideon, has now come into the room, and he looks directly at Anthe and Harrow Gideon, and he's like, "Excuse me," and takes the glasses off Gideon's head and puts them on his eyes. And I'm pretty sure I remember the reason for this, and I'm gonna say I think it's because Pyrrha is now in charge, so he's covering his eyes so that nobody can tell that Pyrrha is the one in charge and not him, if I remember correctly. Okay, so here's a sentence. The woman I was pretty sure was actually my mother, wearing the body of a woman I'd had a crush on, who in turn had been wearing the identity of a woman she'd murdered until I fell on a spike so that my boss could kill her. Craned her head around in her bond. So, the woman who was my mother, who is Commander Wake, wearing the body of a woman I'd had a crush on, Dulcinea, well, Cytherea, who had in turn been wearing the identity of a woman she'd murdered, Dulcinea. When I read this originally, I was so confused on whether or not Cytherea was actually not really Cytherea, was just pretending to be Cytherea, but she was, and Cytherea was actually killed by Harrow and Gideon and Cam. So, it took like 4 or 5 of them to take this bitch down. So Gideon, who is constantly accused of being slow on the uptake, has figured it out and fights past Anthe to present herself and say, "I'm not fucking dead," because they were like, "Oh, so yeah, the baby just died." And she's like, "I'm not fucking dead." And so fucking God looks at her and goes, "Hi, not fucking dead. I'm dead." Tim's and Mir's humor. So yeah, that's where we're at. There's 30 pages left, so I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so I did remember. So Gideon now is in first person, and she's like, "I told you that." So she's talking about a day that her and Harrow fought. One of the days they fought, because they fought all the time. And we know that the day that Harrow tried to go into the tomb is right after her and Gideon fought. And they fought because Harrow caught Gideon telling her mom's niece that she loved her, and Gideon attacked her, choked her, Harrow scratched her, and it says, "I told you that my mother had probably loved me a lot more than yours loved you. You clawed my face so bad that my blood ran down your hands. My face was under your fucking fingernails. When I let you go, you couldn't even stand. You just crawled away and threw up. Were you 10, Harrow? Was I 11? Was that the day you decided you want to die?" So, the thing about the blood words is, because Gideon has the blood of John, she could pass the blood wards because they are attuned to God. So because the day that Harrow broke the blood wards is the day that she went with Gideon's blood under her nails, she was able to break the blood wards. And that is how she found the body. Okay, so here is the mystery of Gideon's eyes. So Alecto, or Annabelle Lee, was technically John's cavalier, the first cavalier. He tells Harrow in this book that she was the first, and all lictors are descendant from her, essentially, in a kind of magical way. And we also get told in here that she was an abomination and dangerous, and the other lictors asked John to, quote, put her down. And he said that he couldn't really kill her. She wasn't really killable. So he switched her off and put her in the tomb and set Anastasia to guard. So that is that part. Now the eyes, okay? So if she's the cavalier, then they would have swapped eyes. So his ridiculous eyes, which are like black with like oil spills circling around them and are completely unnatural, were Alecto's eyes. And the gold cat's eyes that Gideon has were actually John's eyes. So genetically, his eyes could be passed down to Gideon, and they were. So that's how that happened. And that's why everyone is afraid of Gideon's face. Because they see the eyes, and they lose their shit. But the other thing that this means is the first Cavalier didn't have to die. The first Cavalier remained alive. So, has John been hiding the secret from everyone that there is a way to keep your Cavalier alive? And is that why everyone wants to kill him? Okay, so I was right. Pyrrha has been revealed as being in command of Gideon Classic's body. And she reveals to Gideon that they had been doing the same trick, essentially, that Harrow and Gideon had been doing for centuries, where Pyrrha had been hidden in Gideon's body without anybody knowing. Even Gideon, at some points, didn't know. And funny thing is, apparently, Pyrrha was having an affair with Gideon's mother, Gideon the Second's mother, well before Gideon Prime's body was, or mind was, doing the trick that Cam and Pal did to do in Nona to share a body. Yes, so gets even more convoluted, and I fucking love it. I fucking love it. Okay, so before I forget what happened by getting tangled up in what's going to happen, which is just very apt for this series, I'm going to tell you, okay, so Augustine, Mercy Morn, and Captain Wake, and even Gideon Gideon Prime, all wanted to kill God, okay? So Mercy Morn blew him up into pieces. And the thing is when you kill God because he powers the sun, you destroy our resurrected universe, the 9 planets that, well, 8 planets and 1 dwarf planet that we know that he resurrected, created differently, and has populated somewhat, because the 9th planet is not populated really well. So he brought himself back because he's fucking God. He brought himself back, stabilized the sun, and hoped that the 6th wouldn't have taken any damage. Okay, so he asks everyone in the room to swear their allegiance. Gideon Prime / Pyrrha swears allegiance, and they immediately. He doesn't give Gideon 2.0 the chance to, because he says that it wouldn't be fair, partially because she's going to be in emotional turmoil right now, and also partially because she is piloting Harrow's body and it's not her body to make a choice with. So he just chucks her over on the side of allegiance. Then he asks Augustine. Augustine says no and drops the ship into the river to try to take God towards the stoma. The stoma is basically a hole to hell where even God can't resurrect from because his powers don't work there. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's essentially, they're all calling it hell. So, Augustine fights with God in the river. Pyrrha and Gideon are not necromancers, so they can't survive the river, and they have to figure out how they're going to survive. Are they going to take a bullet? Are they going to let the river, try to brave the river and probably get crushed, or are they going to let stoma eat them and go to hell? So that's their struggle, is what to decide. Gideon decides, fuck this, and jumps into the river. So she jumps into the river, and as her and Pyrrha are watching, Ianthe is watching Augustine and God struggle, and Ianthe decides to save God and let Augustine be eaten. And Gideon's like, oh, of course Ianthe would choose the bad choice to work with God, okay? So, here's what happens next. The corpse, Harrow's love, pulls Gideon and Pyrrha out of the river, okay? This is how the body, the corpse, the ghost, Alecto, gets joined into Harrow's body and gets protected by Pyrrha, essentially. I don't know exactly how they met up with Cam and all them. That will come eventually, I think. Now, on Harrow's end, okay, so here's that was the spoiler for Nona. Here's another spoiler for Nona. Half of Nona is God telling us the story of what happened. It's written as if he's telling Harrow, essentially, is I think what we're supposed to assume is that he's telling Harrow. Harrow, remember how I said she was trying to decide if she was going to swim into the river into the unknown, or if she was going to go back to her body. Well, Dulcinea came back and told her that she could sense that Harrow's body was being piloted, not puppeted by the Revenant, but piloted. And Harrow infers correctly that means Gideon is in charge of her body. So she can choose to go back to her body and give up Gideon completely and entirely, not knowing that there's a way to compartmentalize. Or she can go into the river. So she dives into the river and she finds an island. And that's where I'm at right now. So. Okay, so we end Gideon's chapter with Gideon saying, like, and then we died. And then we end Harrow's chapter with Harrow Hark, known as Jesimus, fell asleep, or dropped dead, or both. So we end, essentially, before the epilogue, we end this book with them dead. Both of them. But now we're going to do the epilogue, which is only like 2 pages. Okay, and at the end, very end of the epilogue, we get a hint of what's to come in Nona, where she lives with 3 people. The person who teaches her, the person who... what is it? The person who taught her, the person who looked after her, and the person who went to work for her are the 3 people that we have here. One of them is Pyrrha, one of them is Cam, and the other one is... I can't remember who. Anyway, doesn't necessarily matter at this point because we're not talking about this. But Cam is trying to figure out who she is. Because that's the question, is who is in Harrow's body at the end of this book? Because it could be Gideon, it could be Alecto, or it could be Harrow. But Harrow goes to the tomb and lays down with the sword. And one of Gideon's made up dirty magazines called Frontline Titties of the Fifth. Which Harrow's like, Nav, you idiot, it's not even a real publication. Which is a joke from the first book. And honestly, I will be rereading this again physically soon. The question is, do I do Nona first and then go back and reread this? Or do I don't know, man. We'll figure it out. I'm going to take out the dog because he's been whining at me. He probably wants dinner, but we're going to go for a walk first. And then I'm going to come back and give you some thoughts and edit this and get it out for you because I need to do it while all my thoughts are fresh. So I'll be back in a little bit. It won't be any time for you. Okay, so now that this is wrapped up, I honestly think this answers questions that occurred to us through the book, and it also gives us the history of Gideon's life. The fact that Gideon is the daughter of God. Like, so are we going to use that in future books? Is that going, like, as far as continuing with the religious, like the Christian religious type of imagery, does it matter that Gideon is the daughter of God? That Gideon is essentially Jesus? Does that matter? And what are we going to do with that? Everything else just answers questions that the book created. And then at the end, we get the question of, if we pretend that we haven't read Nona, what is going to happen with Ianthe and God? Where are they going? How are they going to survive? Where is Harrow actually? Is she actually in, like, the locked tomb? Or is she pretending that, like, she created this thing in this island in the river? And how did she find an island in the river? And also, what happens to Gideon's soul? If Gideon died, and presumably Alecto went into Harrow's body, what happened to Gideon's soul? Did it go back into the river? And still, what happened to Gideon's body? Because when Harrow meets the group of Camilla and Dias and Coronabeth, she says they have like a poster of a woman who looks like Gideon, which is the same woman that was the Revenant, so Gideon's mom. So they have a poster of Gideon's mom. Is it actually a poster, or is that because Harrow's brain was still messed up at the time? Was that a poster, or was that something else? Like, what actually was that? And how does Pyrrha get Harrow's body in connection with Cam for the events of Nona the Ninth? Those are all questions. Like, those are all questions that I still have. I cannot wait to do another read of this. I'm like itching to pick it up and like read this again, or go back and reread Gideon, or go back and reread like Nona. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to go through all my notes in Gideon and start trying to get those sorted. And I think probably what I'll do is do like a live react as I go through each chapter and be like, okay, I'm going through this chapter. Here is what I'm doing. We've kind of already talked about the first act, and I can put that link somewhere here. If you want to watch I have 2 videos on the first act of Gideon the Ninth. I will try to get the next videos going because I'm kind of like in the zone with this now. So, I hope you enjoyed this. Leave me a skull emoji if you made it this far. Let me know anything you think I missed. Because I probably missed a lot because I wasn't planning on doing this. And there's so much in this. So I am going to be doing a deeper dive. So if there's something you want me to talk about, or you think that even if something you want to talk to me about, like, tell me about it, and I will definitely be in the comments. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you soon.